If you can't tell from my Victor Cruz user picture or my hoodie, I'm a Giants fan. But I never fully tell the story of how I became a Giants fan. It was 2009. The Steelers were playing the Cardinals in the Super Bowl, and it was the first game I was ever really aware of. And boy, it was a fun one. It was such a good game that it got me into football video games. NFL Blitz, Backbreaker. Hell, I even gave Madden on the Wii a try, and boy, it was weird. Fast forward to the 2011 playoffs. Giants, Niners, live in Candlestick Park. Overtime. Eli's chin strap is over his nose. Things are going on. And there was something about the team that just resonated with me. So going into the 2011 Super Bowl, I had a team to root for. It seemed impossible, even to me as a football noob, that the Giants could beat the Patriots again after being such huge underdogs both times. Surely the Patriots get their revenge, right? 5,010 days ago, they beat the Patriots, and I decided to hitch my wagon to the team that had a 9-7 roster and Eli Manning, and boy, it was a decision. I tell you this story because you need to understand that I wasn't born in New York, okay? I don't have any family or friends that are Giants fans. I chose this. So when you go to the comments saying, how could you complain about being a Giants fan? You've seen them win 2 Super Bowls in your life. I haven't. Okay, because I jumped on the bandwagon right after their most recent win. And if you want to call me a bandwagon fan, I'd argue that that bandwagon drove off a cliff like 5 seasons ago. So save it, all right? I want you to feel bad for me over the course of this video because being a Giants fan is like nothing else. And if you like detailed crash outs, this is the video for you. Grab a medium Pepsi because I'm gonna go deep into the root problems of this snake-bitten franchise. Yeah, let's talk about the New York Football Giants. But we can't start here. Okay. This hoodie smells weird. I'm gonna take it off real quick. All right, that's better. I'm allergic to cats, but even if I wasn't, I'd feel like there'd still be some resentment there. And if you were there on November 4th, 2019, you'd know exactly what I'm talking about. It was Cowboys-Giants, Monday Night Football. The Giants are up a score and driving down the field. And then a black cat runs across the field. The Cowboys had control of the game for the rest of the time, and look, here we are. Giants have 1 playoff win since then, which I think is the same as Dallas. But the point is that we got cursed by a literal black cat. You can't make that up. Giants fans have been through a lot, and for that reason, we kind of wear this feel bad for us entitlement. And I used to think that the Giants were the model fans of class and well-established football fans. But then I got Twitter, and things changed pretty quickly. Giants fans are an annoying group. I can recognize that. Anytime we win a game, we're ready for the Super Bowl because we just have that Super Bowl entitlement baked into our fandom. And you know, when you're a part of the NFC East and you watch Cowboy fans and you watch Eagle fans and Commander fans or whatever, but the point is that when you have those as the bar, it's very easy to look in the mirror and be like, oh, you know, we're not so bad. But the truth is that most Giants fans are like right on that border of Philadelphia and Jersey, so you can't really claim superiority when in reality it's like mostly the same people overall. I'm not here to say that Giants fans are as bad as Philly fans, but I am here to say that they're not that different from like an objective geographical standpoint. We boo Daniel Jones, we demand for coaches to get fired almost immediately, and we antagonize a lot of fan bases. I don't know if you were on Twitter last week, but Giants-Broncos fans created one of the weirdest rivalries I've ever seen. Over the next 4 segments, we'll drill down to why there's this entitlement and why this team is just so goddamn infuriating. So let's get up. You remember Odell's catch? How could you not? It's one of the greatest catches in NFL history. I'd argue the best. But do you remember the fact that we lost that game? I need you to understand that being a Giants fan is a potent drug. So much talent has funneled inside and outside of this building. The Giants have been around for more than 100 years and have the 3rd most Hall of Famers in the NFL. But lately it's felt like the Hall of Shame. Plaxico Burress shot his leg, Jason Pierre-Paul stuffed his hand in a firework machine, and, you know, Kadarius Toney happened. There's just been so many crazy situations with this team. But let's keep things current and rattle off some facts about the current Giants personnel. Jalen Hyatt, the fact that he wears number 13 makes my skin crawl. The Biletnikoff winner has 79 receiving yards over the past 2 seasons. Great. Evan Neal, a lineman that was on the top of pretty much every team's board, now isn't even worth suiting up on Sundays. Cool. Graham Gano, how does this keep happening? How do you get an injury-prone kicker? Oh, he's 38 and plays at MetLife Stadium. Now it's starting to make a little sense. And lastly, Jamie Gillen. No one talks about him because he's a punter and punters are boring. But this guy routinely short punts it, never puts the ball where he needs to. The Scottish Hammer has been playing a lot like the Scottish Screwdriver. Can we stop getting guys from Europe? And since we're talking about that, let's talk about Jude, because he's an idiot, and at least he's gone. For now, at least. If you're keeping track at home, we have an Irish kicker who can't kick, who's the only player in NFL history that has a soccer background that couldn't seem to figure it out, and then a Scottish punter who also can't kick. Can we get out of Europe? And how could I forget about Deonte Banks? Every time he was on the field, the Broncos scored last week, and he was on the field for 1 quarter. They abused him and targeted the hell out of him. Look at this tackle. How? Do you remember the Daniel Jones trip game? Of course you do, it's one of the funniest moments ever. But what a lot of people tend to forget is the Giants were gonna win that game. And Daniel Jones tripping on the 2-yard line isn't what cost us. Evan Ingram's brick hands, that's what cost us. And it's just stuff like that that really makes you think, God, this sucks. I always tell my partners that I'll never cheat on them because I'm a Giants fan, so if I've stuck it with them for this long, I'm certainly not going to be disloyal to a person. The Giants have broken my heart more than anyone. But I'll tell you about the last time I almost gave up on this team. It was 2019, and a new GM had just come in, a real hot shot. He took a running back, and then he wanted to make a splash in his second offseason. So he figured the best way to do that was to trade one of the Giants' best players. A guy who embodied New York City. A guy who was all about the glitz and the glamour, and while he got into fights with kicking nets and was a little injury prone, he was still a stud. Gettleman traded Odell Beckham, and for that I'll never forgive him. I always say that if I was in a room with Dave Gettleman, a gun, and a bullet, I would shoot myself. That way I wouldn't have to be in a room with Dave Gettleman. I hate this guy. He made so many terrible moves. And I think that's why we need to give Joe Schoen a little bit longer of a leash, all right? Joe Schoen didn't draft Dan Jones at 6. He didn't take a running back at 2. He didn't overpay guys like Kenny Golladay and Nate Solder. That being said, he's far from off the hook. A lot of the guys I just listed were guys that Schoen drafted or retained. Okay, he can't hide behind Gettleman's gaffes forever, but the fact of the matter is most of his regime has been repairing the mistakes that Dave Gettleman already made. So, you know, we should cut him some slack. At this point, the training wheels are off though, and we still aren't sure if this guy can even ride the damn bike. Schoen is partially to blame for the kicking situation. He also didn't look great during the whole Hard Knocks Saquon thing, not because he acted out of bad faith, but because he just looked like a naive idiot. And he gave Saquon's contract to Darius Slayton, which was a really weird move. But to be fair, he does draft pretty well, and he makes pretty solid trades in the spirit of winning. He's never afraid to be too aggressive, and I like that about Joe Schoen. He makes pretty good moves, like trading for Brian Burns. He also traded for Darren Waller, but you know, not everyone has a 100% hit rate. That being said, the Giants are in the same spot they were when he took over, so, you know, he can't hide behind Gettleman's gaffes forever. The wins have to start coming, but Joe Schoen is not the first guy on my blame list, if that makes sense. Good GMs take time, just like a good steak, right? Howie Roseman was supposed to be fired like 3 or 4 times before he became the best GM in all of football. So, look, I get that it's easy to get mad at Joe Schoen, and the people that say he's a package deal with Brian Daboll make no sense to me. But give him some time. Dave Gettleman is the bar, and the bar is through the ground. So, give him time. That's why I'm cooking. He also drafted Kayvon Thibodeau, who, you know, hasn't really panned out, but who could have foreseen that? It's pretty damn good. Let's talk about our next pillar of frustration. Ownership. Eli Manning is one of the most iconic Giants in history, and he even tried to get a seat at the ownership table. But his last few seasons were tumultuous at best. He got benched for no reason, and it was just a weird transition from him to Daniel Jones. But in that last season, Eli did get a couple starts during the little transitionary phase between great quarterbacks. It was 2019, Monday Night Football, Giants-Eagles, and Eli comes out roaring. 17-3 at halftime. Oh my God, the Giants are gonna win. Eli's good again. This is awesome. And then the Giants didn't score for the entire second half. They ended up losing in overtime thanks to a Zach Ertz touchdown. Yeah, this pain runs deep. Even the emotional, heartfelt, storied wins can never seem to go in our favor. And I might be going insane here because I've convinced myself that the Giants lose so often that it makes the wins that much more special. And because of that, I have more reason to root for them because, you know, how many teams can get that happy over a Tommy DeVito Monday night win? That was like the best day of my life. So I'm rationalizing these wins like a crazy person. And that's what'll happen. Since 2017, 2 teams have lost more than 90 games, and they both play in New York. And there's been a common denominator between that. Bad ownership. Let's call it like it is. The Giants have changed coaches, they've changed GMs, they've moved players, but John Mara's been here the whole time. And I'll be honest, he really pisses me off. He always meddles with team affairs and can't seem to find the right people to lead the organization. He's one of the most frustrating owners in the NFL and deserves a lot of blame for the lack of team culture and consistent losing. But to be fair, blaming John Mara is kind of a cop-out, if we're being honest. No one hates seeing the Giants lose more than John Mara, so there's really no point in pointing the finger at a guy who's sick and also just has the right intentions but the wrong execution. You know, we've all made mistakes. For a lot of owners, winning is secondary. And John Mara's been around for all 4 Giants Super Bowl wins, so clearly he knows a thing or two about winning. Again, he's not exempt from blame. He's made some really weird judgment calls, like interfering with a Saquon trade on his last season. But, you know, most owners suck, man. And if good ownership directly translated to wins, the Dolphins would be great and the Chiefs would be terrible. But that's simply not the case. So while it's easy to blame one man, it's just too easy. So, you know, let's point fingers at the real culprits of the Giants' struggles. Well. Not much of a surprise here, huh? It's the coach's fault. I have a folder on my phone titled "Save This for When the Giants Win the Super Bowl." And I started it in 2021. The Giants were playing the Commanders, football team, on Monday Night Football, and they got an interception in Washington territory with less than 2 minutes to go. Surely they win this game, right? Of course. It's never that easy for the Giants. They did get a field goal, but Washington went down, got a game-winning kick that they originally missed, but Dexter Lawrence was offsides. Another painful loss. And that's the kind of thing you just have to blame on coaching. And make no mistake, the Giants' coaching issues are not new. Since 2000, they've allowed 17 game-winning kicks in the last 6 seconds of regulation or overtime. And yes, that leads the NFL. So these coaching problems aren't new. Even Coughlin had his issues. Ben McAdoo threw players under the bus. Pat Shurmur was sure to get in the way of Dan Jones' development. And Joe Judge. Let me talk about Joe Judge for a second. This guy was not qualified to get the job. He was a special teams coordinator. Have you heard of such a thing? Then he hires Jason Garrett as his offensive coordinator. He never has a winning season. And then he goes to the media talking about, oh, we gotta be better. Oh, we gotta try harder. This team sucks. It's like, are you serious? You're the worst coach I've ever seen. Joe Judge is an idiot, and I will never forgive the Giants for bringing that brick on. He was so goddamn bad as a head coach, it makes my head spin. But that is not to excuse Brian Daboll. I said in my last video that a good coach is a leader of men, so I've got a few questions for you about Brian Daboll. Does a leader of men allow for the most penalty yards in the entire NFL? Does a leader of men get into a public feud with his defensive coordinator? Does a leader of men allow for 3 2-score leads to be blown across 7 games? Does a leader of men consistently have stubborn depth chart issues, such as a Deontay Banks-Cordell Flott controversy, the whole kicker thing, not to mention trotting Russ out there? And speaking of Russ, does a leader of men go into the medical tent to check on Jackson Dart because he's worried what his team will look like with Russell Wilson? Okay, maybe that one's fair. I'll give you that one. Do leaders of men bring on one of the worst coordinator staffs in the NFL and retain them for the sake of stability? Mike Kafka has had a weird journey as Giants offensive coordinator. This guy had play calling abilities and then lost play calling abilities and then got them back for this passive aggressive weird style of offense, trying not to lose. He makes some weird play calls, and he's a big reason the Giants lost to Denver last week, make no mistake. Kafka's not working with a ton, but it feels like him and Dart were the only 2 people in the entire stadium last week that didn't know Dart should have waited to score. That's on coaching. Dart is 22 years old, Mike. Kafka's play calling at the end of last week made me want to rip my eyes out, but it is nothing compared to the atrocity that is the defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. This guy is off this planet bad. There's so much evidence to prove that this guy just doesn't think. He lost to Dallas. We didn't lose to Dallas. He lost to Dallas because he called that nonsense prevent defense. And then fast forward 5 weeks, and guess what? We're running a very similar concept because this guy doesn't learn from his mistakes. And what if I told you that Dexter Lawrence wasn't even on the field for that main prevent call? Why is our safety back that far? As if Bo Nix is gonna throw it 80 yards? What are we doing? Seriously, Shane Bowen, bravo. Bravo! Wow! Really inspiring stuff. This guy had a good defensive front through 3 quarters, and then Paulson Adebo goes out and he gets straight up exposed. Shane Bowen's already playing on borrowed time, and if he's back next year as defensive coordinator, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna lose my mind. I'm sick of this guy in press conferences acting like everything's cool. It's not cool, man. You've cost us at least 2 games. And it's not just about the Denver game either. This guy has been gifted a great defense with a ton of great personnel. A lot of you would agree the Giants have one of the most exciting pass rush units in the NFL. Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and Abdul Carter, who's weirdly getting reps at middle linebacker for some reason, and Dexter Lawrence also isn't even playing in the right gap. That's neither here nor there. This defense has, guess, 15 sacks. That's not that much, especially with league leader Brian Burns having like 9 of them. How is that even possible? 15 sacks? That's the same amount as the Micah Parsons less Dallas Cowboys. Everybody knows that defense is terrible. Shane Bowen has no idea how to use personnel. I don't understand how he has a job. So keep Dable, don't keep Dable. At this point, I don't even know, because it seems like he's developing Dart well, but if this guy can't close out games effectively, how are we ever going to win anything of substance? Because like it or not, the Giants might be a poverty franchise, but the bar is Super Bowl, okay? Not getting blanked by Philly in the divisional round, okay? This isn't Buffalo. We're not cool with a good season. We want a Super Bowl. And I don't think Brian Dable is the guy that can bring that to us. I'm not saying fire everyone, but I have no immediate solutions for how to fix this cursed team. Hopefully this time next year I have a better view on it, and hopefully the Giants aren't 2-5 again. Because this season has made me want to tear my hair out. It's been so frustrating, and I needed to talk about it. The Giants are always a hot topic, so I figured I could give you a real detailed root study of why this team constantly struggles. But I think I've received enough pity for one day, alright? Drop a like, subscribe, because I will be back and probably going to talk about the Jets, so tune in for that, but this has been a tough one to make. But anyways, I'm going to leave you with this. In the words of the great Michael Irvin, put your damn championship on the table. Put your damn championship on the table.
Put my damn championship on the table. That's all we ask. Put your damn championship on the table, and you couldn't do it.